there are some family secrets that should never be uncovered. This story began on a quiet ranch outside a small town, where nothing seemed unusual at first. The nights were peaceful, the animals were calm, and the family had lived there long enough to know every sound the property could make, until things started happening that had no logical explanation. Doors began opening on their own. Animals refused to go near certain parts of the ranch, and then a young girl started waking up in the middle of the night, repeating words she claimed she had never heard before. At first, everyone blamed nightmares. Then they discovered something disturbing. Someone in the family had been hiding an old secret. And when that secret was finally connected to the girl's godmother, the family realized they might not be dealing with a haunting at all. They might have brought something into their home, and whatever it was, it seemed to know every member of the family. Part 1. The Ranch Outside Town. The ranch sat far enough from town that the nights felt completely different. There were no bright streetlights outside the windows, no traffic, no neighbors close enough to hear if someone called for help. Just open land, old fences, livestock, and miles of darkness. The family had always liked that kind of quiet. It gave them privacy. But there was one person who had always made the narrator uncomfortable. Her godmother. She was a respected woman in the community. People knew her as someone who was private, serious, and unusually interested in old traditions. She rarely talked about her past, and whenever someone asked about certain things she kept in her house, she would simply change the subject. The narrator never thought much about it. Not until the godmother began visiting the ranch more often, and every time she came, something strange seemed to happen afterward. The first few incidents were small enough to ignore. A door left open. An object moved from one room to another. A horse suddenly becoming terrified of an empty corner of the barn. Nothing that could prove anything. But then the family noticed something even stranger. The godmother wasn't the only person acting differently. Her goddaughter had started changing too, and nobody understood why. Part 2. The First Warning. The first warning came late one evening. Everyone was inside when the horses suddenly became agitated. At first, the family assumed they had heard an animal outside, but when someone went to check the barn, there was nothing there. No predator, no broken fence, nothing. Yet the horses were pressed against the far side of their stalls, staring toward the same dark corner. The narrator's father walked closer and tried to calm them. Then one of the horses suddenly kicked the wooden stall door. Hard. Everyone froze, because the horse wasn't looking at the person standing nearby. It was looking behind him. The family searched the barn. Nothing. They eventually returned to the house, trying to convince themselves it had been nothing. But later that night, the narrator woke up to a faint sound coming from outside. It sounded like someone whispering. At first, the voice was too quiet to understand. Then it became clearer, and what the narrator heard made their blood run cold. It sounded like a young girl's voice, calling their name from outside the house. Part 3. Something was wrong with her. The next morning, everyone tried to act normal. Nobody wanted to talk about what had happened during the night. But the narrator noticed something strange at breakfast. The goddaughter was sitting completely still. She hadn't touched her food. Her eyes were fixed on the window. When the narrator asked what she was looking at, she didn't answer. Instead, she quietly asked, "Why was she outside last night?" The room went silent. Someone asked who she meant. The girl simply looked toward her godmother. Then she said something that nobody expected. She claimed she had seen the godmother standing outside the ranch house in the middle of the night. But there was one problem. The godmother insisted she had never left her room. And when the family checked the security camera from the previous night, there was something standing near the barn. Something that looked like a person, but the footage was too distorted to identify who or what it was. That was the moment the family stopped treating the strange events as coincidences, because whatever had appeared outside that night seemed to be getting closer. Part 4. The Hidden Object. After that night, nobody in the house felt comfortable being alone. The family started keeping the doors locked, even during the day. But the strangest change was in the goddaughter. She became quieter. She stopped playing outside, and whenever her godmother visited, she would disappear into another room. One afternoon, the narrator found her standing near an old wooden cabinet. She was staring at it without moving. When asked what she was doing, she pointed toward the bottom drawer. She said there was something inside that drawer that didn't belong to them. The drawer was locked. Nobody knew where the key was. Eventually, the family forced it open. Inside was an old cloth-wrapped bundle. There were dried herbs, a small handwritten note, and an old photograph. But the photograph was the disturbing part. It showed the godmother many years earlier, standing beside another woman, and behind them was the same ranch. The narrator turned the photograph over. Written on the back were 3 words: "Never break it." Nobody understood what that meant, until the godmother saw the photograph. Her face completely changed. She immediately demanded that they put everything back. And for the first time, the family saw fear in her eyes. Part 5. The secret she wouldn't explain. The family confronted the godmother that evening. They asked her what the bundle was. She refused to answer. Then they asked about the photograph. Again, silence. Finally, she admitted that the objects belonged to someone from her past. But she insisted they had nothing to do with what was happening at the ranch. The narrator didn't believe her. Neither did the others. Because that same night, the goddaughter began screaming from her bedroom. Everyone rushed upstairs. She was sitting on her bed, staring at the corner of the room. She kept repeating the same sentence. "She wants it back." Nobody knew what she meant. Then she pointed toward the hallway. The godmother was standing there, completely still. The girl immediately stopped screaming. And then she whispered, "You brought her here." The godmother said nothing. She simply walked away. That was when the family realized the girl might know something that the adults didn't. Part 6. The ranch turns against them. Over the following days, the incidents became impossible to ignore. Animals began refusing food. The dogs barked at empty spaces. Lights flickered even when there was no electrical problem. And every night, someone heard footsteps walking around the house. But the footsteps always stopped outside the goddaughter's bedroom. One evening, the narrator found muddy footprints across the hallway. They began at the back door, then continued toward the girl's room. There was only one problem. The door had been locked from the inside. Nobody had entered. Nobody had left. And the footprints ended directly beside her bed. That night, the family decided nobody would sleep alone. They gathered in the living room. The godmother remained unusually quiet. Then around midnight, the lights went out. The entire ranch disappeared into darkness. And from somewhere upstairs came a slow knocking sound. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Pause. Then 3 more. Nobody moved until the goddaughter whispered, "She's here." Part 7. The night. Everything changed. The narrator's father grabbed a flashlight and went upstairs. The others followed. The knocking had stopped. The hallway was empty. Then they heard breathing. Not from inside the rooms, from directly behind them. They turned around. Nothing. Suddenly, the bedroom door slammed shut. The goddaughter screamed. The family tried to open it, but the handle wouldn't move. Then something scratched the other side of the door. Slowly. 3 long scratches. The godmother finally spoke. She told everyone to leave the room. But the narrator noticed something in her hand. It was the old photograph, and she was holding it tightly. When asked why she had it, she finally admitted that the photograph was connected to something that happened decades earlier. Something she had never told the family. She said the woman standing beside her in the photograph had once performed a ritual. And after that ritual, strange things began happening to everyone around her. The godmother had believed the ritual ended years ago, but now she realized it hadn't. It had only been waiting. Part 8. The truth about the goddaughter. The godmother finally confessed something even more disturbing. She believed the goddaughter had somehow become connected to the old ritual. That's why the strange events began when she started visiting the ranch. The girl wasn't causing the disturbances. She was somehow attracting them. The family didn't know whether to believe her, until the goddaughter suddenly began speaking in a voice that didn't sound like her own. She looked directly at the godmother and said, "You promised you would never come back." The godmother went pale. She dropped the photograph. Nobody understood who the girl was speaking to. Then the bedroom window opened by itself. A freezing wind swept through the room, and the photograph on the floor suddenly tore straight down the middle. The image of the mysterious woman was ripped apart, but the godmother's face remained completely untouched. That was the moment she began crying. She knew exactly what it meant. Final part, the last night. The family left the ranch before sunrise. They took only what they could carry. Nobody wanted to stay another night. The godmother refused to come with them. She said she had to stay behind and finish what she started. The narrator never found out exactly what happened to her, But months later, the family received one final piece of information. The ranch had been abandoned. The animals were gone. The house stood empty. Yet a neighbor claimed that lights could still be seen inside the house late at night. And sometimes, someone could be seen standing beside the upstairs window, watching the road. The narrator never returned, but there was one detail they could never explain. The old photograph had been destroyed. Or at least that's what everyone believed, because years later, the narrator found a small photograph inside an old box. It was the same photograph, except this time, there was one additional person standing in the background. The goddaughter, even though the photograph had supposedly been taken years before she was born. Maybe the family really had been dealing with something supernatural. Maybe it was an old ritual that had never truly ended. Or maybe fear had turned a series of strange coincidences into something much darker. But the narrator still refuses to return to that ranch. Because according to the last person who visited the property, the upstairs window is still sometimes illuminated at night. And standing behind the glass, there is always a little girl, watching the road, and waiting for someone from the family to come back.